Welcome to the second session of literary translation. We stopped last time on talking about case studies in literary translation. Shakespeare, King Lear, translating Elizabethan English. Translating Shakespeare presents extraordinary challenges because his language is already archaic and highly literary, even to English speakers. His plays combine elaborate metaphors, dense wordplay, cultural reference to Elizabethan England, and innovations in vocabulary and syntax. Translators must decide whether to use contemporary language or attempt to create the historical distance of the original through archaic forms in the target language. Should a German translator use modern German or attempt some equivalent of early modern German? Modern languages make the play accessible, but erase the historical distance. Archaic language preserves the distance, but may feel artificial or make the play harder to understand. Now let's move to talking about Shakespeare's translation cultural approaches. Different cultures have approached the Shakespeare's translation in various ways. Some translation or some traditions favor prose translations that prioritize clarity and accessibility. Others attempt to preserve the verse structure and poetic qualities. The translators must also consider how King's Lear themes of power, aging, madness, and family conflict resonate differently across cultures, potentially requiring adaptation of certain references or imagery to make them meaningful to target audiences. Family structures differ across cultures, with a culture with different understanding of uh, filial duty, understanding Lear's daughter's behavior the same way Elizabethan audiences would cultures with different attitudes toward aging and authority response to Lear's character the same way. Now let's move to Emily Dixon's poetry. Dickens' poetry is famously challenging to translate due to its comparison, ambiguity, unconventional punctuation, and slant rhythms. Her poems often contains multiple potential meanings, and her distinctive dashes create pauses and connections that do not translate easily. Different translators have taken varied approaches. Some attempts to preserve her formal innovations, while others focus on capturing her imagery and emotional intensity in more conventional forms, arguing that forcing target language poetry into the exact shaping of Dickinson's English produces artificial results. Now let's go to talk about Italian and Russian literature. Italian literature, with its rich tradition of poetry and prose, presents challenges related to its musicality and the cultural uh, embeddedness. Russian literature's translation involves grappling with complex language, featuring aspects of the patronymic systems, this diminutive forms expressing emotional nuance and cultural references, requiring extensive contextual knowledge. Translators of Tolstoy or Dostoevsky must convey not just the plot, but the distinctive philosophical and psychological depth of Russian reality or realist fiction. These authors integrate philosophical reflection into narrative in ways that can feel unusual to readers in other traditions. The translator must preserve this integration without making it feel dedicated or didactic or awkward. Uh, Now let's go to talk about technology and literary translation. Digital tools, while literary translation remains fundamentally a human creative and devour, technology increasingly supports translators' work. Translation memory software allows translators to store and search previous translations, helping maintain consistency in terminology and style. Databases, cataloging translation problems and solutions, provide resources for addressing recurring challenges. Translators can search how others have handled similar issues, how do translators typically handle specific cultural preferences? What strategies exist for translating particular linguistic features? These databases accumulate collective wisdom, making translation less solitary. However, machine translation remains inadequate for literary texts as it cannot capture the nuanced ambiguities and artistic qualities that define literature. Machine translation has improved dramatically for technical and informational texts, but literary translation requires understanding not just what words mean, but how they create aesthetic effects, emotional resonance, and the cultural significance. Machines cannot make the artistic judgments literary translation requires. The most valuable digital tools are those that enhance rather than replace human creativity, enabling research, facilitating collaboration, and organizing the translation process. Digital dictionaries and corpora help translators research usage online forms, connect translators for consultation, project management tools, help organize complex translation work. Technology serves the translator, it doesn't replace them. Now let's go for online collaborative platform. The internet has transformed how translators connect and collaborate. Online platforms enable translators worldwide to form communities, share expertise, discuss challenges or challenging passages, and provide mutual support. Um, Forms, social media groups, and professional networks allow both emerging and establishing translators to learn from each other, regardless of your geographic location. A translator in Argentina working on an English to Spanish translation can consult with translators in Spain, Mexico, or anywhere else, getting the multiple perspectives on challenging decisions. This global community reduces isolation and produces resources that individual translators couldn't access alone. Now let's go to talk about that digital platforms also facilitate real-time collaboration on translation projects. with multiple translators, editors, and reviewers able to work together efficiently. Code-based tools, subject version control, commentary, and cooperative decision making, making the translation process more transparent and collective. Teams can work on different sections simultaneously, share their work easily, and integrate feedback efficiently. Now let's move to talk about the E or PENBAL entrance project. Innovative digital projects like PENBAL entrance pedigree uh, in practice, apprenticeship in literary translation, are reinventing how literary translation is taught. This project creates online spaces for students to work as apprentices to professional translators, gaining real-world experience while still in training. Such initiatives such initiatives demonstrate how technology can bridge the gap between academic study and professional practice, providing students with authentic learning experiences and connections to the translation community. Traditional translation education often kept students isolated in classroom, working on pedagogical experiences disconnected from professional translation. Projects like PEN, PEL, and TransConnect students directly to working professionals and real translation projects. Now let's So, let's talk about ethical and cultural considerations. Translators in visibility versus visibility. Lawrence Vinotti's concept of the translators in visibility describes how translated works are often presented as if they were originally written in the target language with the translator's labor and creative contribution erased. This invisibility can devolve translation as a profession and obscure the interpretive nature of translation. The visibility debate asks whether translators should foreground their presence through prefaces, footnotes, or deliberate foreignization, or maintain the illusion of transparency for readers' ease. Um, should readers be constantly aware they're reading a translation, or should translation be seamless? Now let's move to uh, The other slide talking about cultural references and untranslatables. Every language contains words, concepts, and cultural references that resist translation. However, how should translators handle such elements? Options include finding approximate equivalence, providing explanatory footnotes, leaving terms in the original language, or creatively adapting references to fit the target culture. Each approach has implications for how readers experience the text and understanding the source culture. The translator must balance accessibility with preference, cultural specialty. Uh, and these goals often conflict. Decisions about handling cultural references shape what readers learn about source cultures, whether they encounter authentic cultural differences or domesticated familiarity. Now let's move to respecting authorial intent. Respecting authorial intent, translators face the complex question of how much to prioritize the author's presumed intentions versus adapting the work for the target audience. Should a translator preserve elements that might confuse or alienate target readers if these elements are central to the original? How much freedom does a translator have to interpret, adapt, or even improve upon the original? These questions have two single answers but require thoughtful consideration of the specific text's context and the purpose of translation. Some argue that fidelity to authorial intent is paramount to the translator's job in serving the authorities' vision, not imposing their own. Others argue that authors themselves cannot fully control their texts. Meanings, and translators must create works that function effectively for target readers, even if this requires departing from what the authors might have intended. Now let's move to power dynamics of translation. Ethical translation practice requires awareness of power dynamics, recognizing that translating and the translation often flows from less powerful to more powerful languages and cultures, and the translator's choices can either reinforce or challenge stereotypes and cultural hierarchies. Translators must consider questions of representation, appropriation, and respect, approaching their work with cultural humility and awareness of their position and responsibilities. This means recognizing your own cultural biases, acknowledging what you do not know, consulting with source culture experts when needed, and being conscious of how your choices might perpetuate harmful stereotypes or power imbalances. So now it's our time to move to challenges faced by literary translators, maintaining originality without literalism. One of the translator's greatest challenges is preserving what makes the original text distinctive and powerful without falling into overly literal translation that produces awkward or unnatural freshness. Innovation and impact using different linguistic resources, often requiring creative solutions that diverge from word for word correspondence. If a source text uses an unusual metaphor that exploits specific source language features, you cannot simply translate the world. You need to find a way to create similarly surprising imagery in the target language, which might require completely different words. Now let's go to negotiating between cultures. Translators constantly navigate between sources and target cultures, making decisions about how much culture's information to explain, what references to adapt or preserve, and how to represent one culture to another without exoticizing um, or domesticating excessively. This negotiation requires deep knowledge of both cultures and sensitivity to how cultural elements function within texts. Cultural references aren't just information, they create tune, evoke associations, establish context, and shape meaning. When you translate cultural references, you're not just conveying information, you're shaping how target readers perceive and understand the source culture. Now, let's go to the managing of linguistic creativity and the constraints. Language differ in their expressive possibilities. What comes easily in one language may be difficult or impossible in another. Translators must work within the constraints of the target language while somehow conveying effects that rely on source language features. Um this requires both accepting limitations and finding creative um, compensations, perhaps sacrificing one effect to preserve another, or finding unexpected solutions that achieve similar impacts through different means. If you cannot recreate a specific formal feature, maybe you can achieve similar effects through other means, different imagery, different syntax, different rhythmic patterns. Now let's move to talk about um, senses of translation challenges. These challenges are not merely technical problems to be solved but fundamental aspects of translation work that require ongoing reflection, decision making, and acceptance that translation involves inevitable losses alongside potential gain. The most successful translators are those who embrace these challenges as opportunities for creativity rather than obstacles to overcome. And instead of lamenting what can't be preserved, they focus on what can be achieved in the target language. They view limitations as promise for creativity. How can I achieve this effect given these constraints? Now let's go to talk about strategies for overcoming translation challenges. Domestication and foreignization techniques, drawing On Vinoti's terminology, translators can employ domestication strategies that make foreign texts familiar and accessible to target readers, or foreignization strategies that preserve the text's cultural otherness. Domestication might involve replacing culture-specific references with the target culture equivalents, while foreignization retains foreign words, names, and concepts, perhaps with explanatory notes. This preserves cultural specificity but may make text feel foreign or difficult. Reading a foreignized translation requires more work from readers who must engage with familiar cultural elements rather than having everything made comfortable and familiar. Skilled translators often use a mixture of both approaches, the domesticating some elements for readability while foreignizing others to preserve a cultural specificity. The key is making conscious, informed choices rather than defaulting to one strategy exclusively. Different elements in the same text might call for different categories. Now let's go to uh, para-textual elements, footnotes, endnotes, glossaries, translators per prefaces, and others para-textual elements provide ways to explain cultural context, discuss translation choices, or provide information that helps readers understand the original, while some argue that such elements interrupt reading flow. They can be valuable tools for preserving cultural specificity while ensuring comprehension. Parathesis allow translators to have it both ways, formalizing the main text while providing accessibility through supplementary explanation. Now let's move to the translator must decide when paratextual explanation is necessary and how much to provide. Too much can overwhelm readers, while too little may leave them confused. Well-crafted paratexts can also make a translation process visible, educating readers about the challenges and the choices involved. Oh, a translator's preface that explains the source language's features and discusses translation strategies helps readers appreciate both the original's distinctiveness and the translation's achievement. This visibility can enhance appreciation rather than disruptive enjoyment. Now let's go to talk about collaborative translation and mentoring. Many successful translators emphasize the value of collaboration, working with co-translators, editors, not native speakers of source or target languages, or subject matter experts. Collaboration bring multiple perspectives to bear on translation problems and can help translators avoid errors or find solutions they wouldn't discover alone. Mentoring relationships where experienced translators guide newcomers are particularly valuable for developing professional skills and learning the crafts. Mentors provide not just technical guidance, but also professional wisdom, how to find work, how to negotiate with publishers, how to manage difficult projects, how to develop professionally. They also provide encouragement and the community, helping news comers navigate translations, challenges, and build confidence. Now let's go to the importance of literary translation, simulating target languages. Literary translation enriches target languages by introducing new vocabulary, syntactical structures, and expressive possibilities. Translators often need to create new terms or push the boundaries of existing language to capture source text meanings. This linguistic innovation contributes to language evolution and vitality. Many languages have been revitalized or modernized in part through translation, which forces engagement with new concepts and the forms of expression. The process of translation can reveal gaps in a language's vocabulary or expressive range, spurring linguistic creativity and development. For example, modern Hebrew's revival as a spoken language involved extensive translation work. Biblical Hebrew lacked vocabulary for modern life, so translators created new terms, adapted old ones, and borrowed from other languages to create a fully functional modern language. Translation drove linguistic development. Now let's go to opening new literary markets. Translation opens new markets for poets, authors, and publishers, allowing literary works to reach global audiences. Successful translations can create international bestsellers, introduce readers to previously unknown literary traditions, and foster cultural exchange. The growing global market for translating fiction with initiatives like the Man Booker Interpretation Prize celebrating translated works demonstrates increasing recognition of translation's culture and economic importance. Publishers investigating in translation contribute to cultural diversity and make world literature accessible to broader relationships. However, publishing translation involves financial risks. Translated books typically sell fewer copies than native language books, and translation costs add to expenses. Many publishers view translation as prestige projects rather than profit centers. Now, let's go to the last slide today, talking about enhancing language learning and cultural understanding. Reading translated literature provides valuable opportunities for language learning and cultural education. Translations expose readers to different ways of thinking, cultural perspectives, and literary traditions, fostering empathy and cross-cultural understanding for language learners. Reading translations alongside originals can deepen comprehension of both languages more broadly. Literary translation contributes to global cultural literacy, helping people understand and appreciate the diversity of human experience and expression across culture. We will stop here and we will continue the last session tomorrow, talking about assessment and evaluation in literary translation education. Until tomorrow, that's all for now.